In this video, you will see Magnus Carlsen's crushing victory in round 1 of the Qatar Masters Open. And it's just fantastic news that top players like Magnus, but also Hikaru Nakamura and Anish Giri and many others, they are playing in an open tournament. Normally they play in closed events, so it's always the top players they are playing with each other. But open tournaments, they are very special. And Srihari from India, 18 years old boy, is the lucky one to be paired with Magnus Carlsen, getting this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to play the greatest player of all time. Well, not sure he felt like he was the lucky one, because he gets totally whipped off the board in only 23 moves. Magnus playing with the white pieces, and you will definitely enjoy this game. So let's have a look. Magnus starts the game with the English opening, but after c6, d4, d5, we are back in the Slav variation. And after knight f3, knight f6, Magnus played here the move g3, and that's a line I used to play myself with the white pieces as well. It's a sort of hybrid system between the Slav and the Catalan opening, but it's considered that very often this bishop, it's intending to go to g2, it's not that well placed against this massive pawn block on b7, c6 and d5. But let's see what the exact ideas of Magnus is. So after bishop f5, very logical move, black wants to place the pawn on e6, but first brings the bishop outside the pawn chain. White, look, this is very important, white doesn't play the standard move bishop g2, which is something many people would have played now. But Magnus consciously develops his knight first to c3. Now black plays the move e6, and here Magnus's idea is revealed as he played here the move knight to h4, questioning that bishop on f5. And with a knight on c3, you're covering the e4 square. There are no longer bishop takes b1 ideas. So white is going to win the bishop pair. I mean, you're not going to win the bishop, black will get a knight for it, but if you would play something like the bishop g6, you can always take it anytime, while if you try to save the bishop with bishop g4, h3 is going to be played, and if you go back to h5, then it's g4 and you will get the bishop pair anyway. That's the sort of game Magnus is looking for. But black decided here to play the move d takes c4, allowing white to take on f5, and after e takes f5, you see that black has two double pawns, one on the f file, the other one on the c file. But here the move e3 is played, and now you understand that the bishop is happy that it's not on g2 yet. It has this option of regaining the pawn on c4. Now, there are various possibilities here. The main move is considered to be knight bd7, was not played in this game, but Magnus had already some experience with it, as in 2022 he played a game with the white pieces against super talent from United States, Mishra, and well, if you take on c4, there's knight b6, and black will try to establish a nice grip on the light squares. That is black's strategy. Now, back to the game. As instead of playing knight bd7, Srihari played here the move bishop to d6. Now, this looks like a very natural developing move, but honestly, I'm not sure the bishop is that well placed on d6, because there's not much it can do on this diagonal. Bishop takes c4, castling kingside, and now the move queen f3 is played. So white is attacking the pawn on f5. g6 is played, so you're protecting the pawn on f5. And now very interesting move by white, as you need to understand that black's plan here is just to play knight bd7, maybe go queen e7, put the rooks in the center, and you're controlling these two squares. Now, very important factor by controlling these squares is this pawn on f5. And therefore Magnus played the move h3, as he is preparing to get rid of that annoying pawn by playing the move g4. Black played queen e7, and here we have another very interesting moment. There are a lot of possibilities. White has the bishop pair, and white has many ideas. The big question is, what is white gonna do with its king? Like, you would expect maybe a move like bishop d2 and castling queenside, and maybe put a king even on b1. There's this idea of castling kingside, which was actually played in the game, but a lot of people would think, hey, I just played h3, I want to go g4, I'm not going to castle kingside. Well, anyway, the move castling kingside was played in the game, and I'm thinking that after something like h5, which was played in the game, black believed here that, well, I no longer have to fear a move like g4, but there are different plans here as well. As now Magnus played the move rook to e1. And if black would continue here with a move like knight bd7, the idea is now to open up the center with a move e4, because you would like to get your bishop into the game, either to g5 or maybe to h6. In such a case, if position gets opened, you take back with a rook, and after queen f6, offering the exchange of queens, white will not be interested in the trading of queens. Queen would go back. And I think white is a bit better because of the bishop pair, control over the e-file. This was Magnus, his plan for sure. Now back to the game, because we understand what white is aiming for. It's either the move g4 or e4, trying to get rid of the pawn on f5. So black played here the move knight to e4, so that this bishop on c1 remains out of play, at least for the moment. g4 was played, and now you understand that with that knight not being placed on f6, this move has been made possible, and it's a very important idea, trying to undermine the outpost on e4. Getting rid of that pawn on f5 is white's top priority, and well, if you would play knight g5, the queen can always come back to g2, everything is well covered, and soon white will open up the king side, and the bishops, they will come alive. So in the game there followed h takes g4, h takes g4. Of course, you cannot take with a pawn on g4 because that hangs the pawn, or the knight on e4. So we got to find an alternative plan. Now, if you ever take first on c3, that is just an improvement of white's center, and there are even plans of playing king g2, rook h1, and shift the attention to the h file. Now back to the game, as Srihari played here this move, bishop to b4, pinning that knight on c3, and it's actually not simple to protect it. You don't want to move your knight because the rook on e1 is hanging, but Magnus goes for g takes f5. Now if you ever take back on f5, it's queen takes f5, and black's center is falling apart. So black's plan here after g takes f5 was now to take on c3. Knight takes c3, b takes c3, and bishop takes the pawn. And all of a sudden there's even a double attack. Both rooks are under threat. It looks like black is winning material now. But Magnus Carlsen, look guys, what he is going to do, it's very impressive. He's ignoring the threat. He realizes he cannot do much about it, but this is all what he had seen in advance. It's not a lucky shot. He played here the move queen to g4, and that's a brilliant move just to illustrate the idea. If you take the rook in the corner, it's queen takes g6, and the pawn on f7 is pinned. You can you have to go into the corner, then it's queen h6, king goes back, you can force a repetition, but you can also play king h2, and next move the rook comes over to the g file with mate to come. So therefore the rook on a1 cannot be captured. If you take the rook on e1, that same mating idea with the king coming over to the h file is not longer applicable. There's queen takes g6 though, and after king h8, queen h6, king g8, now we find a different plan, as white has this idea of deflecting the queen from its defensive duties. With the move bishop a3, you're attacking the queen. If you take on a3, it is the move f6, and it's going to be checkmate on g7 anyway. So you see that with queen g4, there is this massive threat of taking the pawn on g6. Well, white of course is threatening that move. Black got to do something about it. Played here the move king to g7. So at least the king is no longer standing in the same diagonal as this bishop on c4, and the rooks are still hanging. But now white continues fighting for the initiative with the move e4, advancing the pawn in the center. And the point is that now whichever rook you're gonna take, let's say bishop takes a1, which is the game's continuation, there is this move bishop to g5, and you're attacking the queen, you're even attacking the bishop on a1, but we are not caring about that bishop, we are playing for checkmate. That's the idea, and one of the points is that black cannot neutralize this threat with his move f6 because it allows the move bishop h6 with check. And if you take the bishop, it's checkmate on g6. That's the main idea of weakening the g6 square. Now you don't have to take the bishop, obviously. You can go back, for instance, into the corner. But now after f takes g6, you're rook down. But on the next move, there is g7. And it will be checkmate very soon. Or at least you're going to win a lot of material because of this double attack. So this is totally crushing. So there's no way to block the bishop. The queen has to move. And the queen went to b4, setting up a double attack against the rook and bishop. Now, the plan was to advance the pawn to f6. Beautiful idea. It's a check. The king has to go back to g8, because if it goes to the h-file, the queen will come with tempo to the h-file, and the king has to go anyway to g8. And so king g8 is played. Now, of course, you don't want to allow black capturing the rook on e1 with check, so we better do something about it. We take on a1, and black is completely busted here, because if you would take the bishop on c4, there is queen h4, and there's nothing you can do against the threat of queen h6, queen g7. You're not in time to cover the mating threat by controlling the g7 square. You're not in time to eliminate the pawn on f6 either. There followed the move knight to d7 instead. So, okay, this knight can be taken by the queen, but we are playing for a higher goal. Queen h3 was played now, and this looks decisive. It's very important that you're playing for checkmate. Queen h6 is a serious threat, and you can nothing do against it. Black resigned. Let me show you a couple of lines. Once again, if you take the bishop on c4, it's queen h6 with a mating threat. The only move is knight takes f6, but after bishop recaptures, the bishop replaces the pawn, and it's checkmate on g7 anyway. The alternative is to play a move like queen to d6, so that together with the knight, you're intending to take the pawn on f6. But there is queen h6 anyway, threatening mate. Once again, knight takes f6, and now it's queen takes g6. So we are back at the same pattern as the pawn on f7 cannot take the queen. If you go king h8, it's bishop takes f6 with check. The king can't go anywhere, so only move is queen takes f6, but then white just wins the queen. The final move I want to show you is after something like queen h3. If you play, let's say, the move rook f e8 with the idea that after queen h6, you can now come back with the queen to f8, still preventing checkmate on g7, you're offering the exchange of queens. But there's once again the move queen takes g6. The king goes to h8, and now you're looking for the killer blow. Various possibilities, numbers, checks are possible, but the coolest possibility, and I'm pretty sure Magnus would have found that idea, of course, is to ignore black's threat of taking the queen, as white can play here king g2. This is just brilliant. The queen can be taken now, but the problem is that it opens up the diagonal for the light squared bishop. The king cannot go back to g8, so after rook h1, the king cannot go anywhere, and after queen h6, rook takes h6, it is checkmate. White wins the game. So, beautiful game by Magnus Carlsen. I hope you learned something from this brilliant attacking concept by opening the center for your bishops. I thought this was very instructive. Let me know in the comments, what do you think about Magnus's play? And of course, is he going to win the tournament, the Qatar Masters? That is interesting. Or is he going to win a lot of rating points? There are a lot of strong players, so definitely we'll keep an eye on the next couple of rounds as well. Thanks for watching. See you soon. Bye bye.